Hello, if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.
Hi, I will show you how to put a Raspberry Pi 4 in a case. The Raspberry Pi 4 is the fourth generation of the mainline series of Raspberry Pi single-board computers, developed by Raspberry Pi Trading and released on June 24, 2019. The Pi 4 came with many improvements over its predecessor. The SoC was upgraded to the Broadcom BCM2711. Two of the Raspberry Pi's 4 USB ports were upgraded to USB 3.0, and options were added for RAM capacities larger than the 1 GB standard for the preceding Raspberry Pi 3 series. The Pi 4 also ends the trend of the $35 maximum MSRP that previous Raspberry Pis had adhered to, as the larger RAM capacities added extra cost to the board. However, the base 1 GB model is still sold for $35. On September 28, 2023, the Raspberry Pi 5 was announced as the successor to the Raspberry Pi 4. Raspberry Pi 4 is completely upgraded, re-engineered faster, more powerful. You'll recognize the basic shape and size, so you can simply drop your new Raspberry Pi into your old projects for an upgrade. And as always, we've kept all our software backwards compatible, so what you create on a Raspberry Pi 4 will work on any older models you own too. With Raspberry Pi 4, you can run 2 monitors at once, and in 4K, too. The Raspberry Pi 4 Model B is, physically, almost identical to last year's Pi 3 Model B+, but the hardware has been updated in several ways. In place of the old HDMI socket, it now sports twin micro-HDMI ports, capable of driving a pair of 4K displays at 60 Hz. The power socket has also been upgraded to a modern USB Type-C connector, and 2 of the 4 USB ports now support super speed USB 3. Inside, the Pi 4 gets a more powerful CPU, and, while 1 GB of RAM remains the default, for the first time you can optionally specify 2 GB or even 4 GB of RAM. All told, it's a package that addresses many of the limitations of previous Pi hardware, but it's far from a case of same old, same old. For a start, the Raspberry Pi 4 Model B, at last, brings super speed USB to the Raspberry Pi platform. Its 2 USB 3 ports are limited to 5 Gbps, but that's still an order of magnitude quicker than the legacy USB 2 ports that sit next to them. The built-in Bluetooth module, meanwhile, has been upgraded from version 4.2 to version 5, and also includes support for Bluetooth Low Energy. Gigabit Ethernet is still present and correct, as is the ability to use PoE via HAT, and the composite A/V DSI display and camera ports have made the jump as well. The dual-band 802.11 AC Wi-Fi controller remains unchanged, too, but the Gigabit Ethernet connection is no longer capped at 300 Mbps, as in the previous generation, and can now send and receive data at a full 1000 Mbps. In combination with the arrival of USB 3, this opens new possibilities for using the Pi as a networked storage host. A few other tweaks mean that the new Pi won't work perfectly with cases and accessories designed for older models, but we think the changes are worth it. For one, the arrival of twin micro-HDMI ports, in place of the old full-size HDMI connector, means you might need to invest in a new cable, but it also means you can now effortlessly set up a dual display configuration, with resolutions up to 4K at 60 Hz supported. The micro USB power connector has been replaced too by a USB Type-C socket. That's a good call, as the older port is no longer conveniently universal, and it should be easier to find a Type-C power supply with enough juice to keep the Raspberry Pi 4 Model B running at full speed. It's worth noting, however, that due to some strange design decisions, there are some USB Type-C power adapters and cables that will not work properly with a Raspberry Pi 4. Notably those that are more powerful and are remarked. That brings me to the core upgrade. The Raspberry Pi 4's 1.5 GHz Broadcom BCM2711 processor might not sound like a huge step up from the last generation's 1.4 GHz BCM2837, but clock speeds don't tell the whole story. The older model was based on the mid-range ARM Cortex-A53 microarchitecture, while the new one uses an A72 design that's optimized for performance. This gives the Raspberry Pi 4 Model B a substantial speed boost over previous models, as we'll see below. It also means you get a more powerful GPU than ever before, which supports OpenGL ES3 graphics, up from the older ES2 standard, and gains the ability to decode 4K H.265 video at 60 frames per second. On top of the older Pi's support for decoding and encoding H.264 streams. To top it all off, the additional RAM options provide headroom for bigger, more demanding tasks, although note that the memory modules are soldered onto the board, so you can start small and upgrade later. The Raspberry Pi 4 Model B is certainly faster than its predecessors. The latest synthetic benchmarks show major improvements in almost every type of operation. It's a much bigger step up than the previous progression, from the Raspberry Pi 3 Model B to the B+. The Raspberry Pi Foundation has been talking up the Raspberry Pi 4's potential as a general-purpose desktop, and so, alongside our usual set of tests, I also tried running our standard desktop benchmarks. This was gratifyingly easy to do since they're built on the freeware ImageMagick, Handbrake and VLC tools, all of which are included in the latest release of Raspbian. Here the Pi stumbled a little. While the upgraded CPU has its strengths, the system as a whole clearly isn't designed for chewing through large datasets, and the top-end 4GB version of the Raspberry Pi 4 scored a mere 4.9 in the image editing test, 8.3 in the video.
Hello, if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.